I'm going to start off tonight by dropping the A-bomb. So Max has kind of ruined it a little bit, but what is the A-bomb? The A-bomb is I'm Ellie and I'm autistic. And if you're anything like most people, hearing me say that makes you feel a little bit like this. I was very much in that camp too. If a year ago you'd have told me that I was autistic or even kind of used that word, I would have pulled this face a little bit. I didn't know much about what it meant. I didn't really know anybody that was autistic. I didn't know what it looked like, what it presented like, what it meant, but kind of was in this camp. And then I've got a second A-bomb. Oh, I've also got ADHD. So that one probably doesn't make you feel quite as awkward, but a little bit awkward nonetheless. Again, I was very much in that camp. I didn't know very much about ADHD at all. It wasn't something that I'd come across. It wasn't something that anybody I knew had. And just, probably was one of those things that I would have just avoided. These are probably the ideas that I had about the two A-bombs. So if you'd have said the word autism to me, I would have probably pictured either Rain Man or Sheldon Cooper. Definitely a man, definitely a genius, definitely someone that was hugely socially awkward and I would have been able to spot from a mile off. And if you'd have said ADHD, I would have thought of a naughty little schoolboy, someone that was rocking backwards and forwards on his chair, someone that was causing trouble and mayhem and was just quite annoying, and maybe Tigger, someone very energetic and someone that couldn't sit still and was just bouncing all over the place. I definitely didn't think that they could look anything like this. It wouldn't have ever been anything that I could have considered could have related to me. I didn't know anybody that looked like me or acted like me or had anything in common with me that was either autistic or had ADHD. And it was probably something that was just a million miles off really, until the light bulb moment. So in October last year, I was diagnosed with ADHD. And then about a month ago, I got my autism diagnosis after quite a long process of going through that. It really was out of nowhere, really. I'd been going through cycles of being really busy, really energetic, really kind of like this person you see now. And then every 6 months or so, I would crash and burn. And I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety. And that was kind of a bit of a repeating cycle in my life. Busy, happy, energetic to crash and burn. Around this time last year, a little bit earlier, when we were in the middle of that horrible third lockdown after Christmas, I was getting really close to the crash and burn phase, and I was kind of like, I know that depression and anxiety aren't the problem here. I'm not a depressed person, I'm not an anxious person, I'm just hitting a wall somehow. And I was having counselling through work to deal with the low mood. And we were talking about something that my ex-boyfriend had done that had annoyed me, and my counsellor's response was, has it ever been looked into why you take things so literally? And my response was, no, but I kind of think I know what you're hinting at here. And then went away, entered a massive Google, Instagram, TikTok rabbit hole, came across all the symptoms of ADHD and autism, and suddenly my life made more sense in 2 computer screens than it had done by anybody I'd spoken to or anyone I'd ever met. That kind of kicked off the process of me discovering this, and that's kind of led to lots of exciting things. Usually when I'm talking and doing things like this, I would tell you more about that light bulb moment, more about what it means to be autistic and have ADHD and the ways in which people can be more supportive. But I'm very aware that tonight is a night for marketers, and as well as being autistic and having ADHD, I am a marketer. So I kind of wanted to touch on how those things I think make me a better marketer, and maybe some of the lessons that other marketers might be able to take from the way that my brain works. So I've got 3 lessons for you today. They don't make much sense here, but hopefully they will by the end. So lesson 1, be the zoologist. Lesson 2, cut the fluff. And lesson 3, do the dump. Hopefully that'll make a bit more sense by the time we get through them. So lesson 1, be the zoologist. So what do I mean by this? I have been a marketer for coming up to 2 years, but I feel like I've been marketing myself for much longer than that. So masking is something that particularly autistic people do, where they kind of cover up their neurodivergent traits and present themselves in a way that fits in with society. So obviously not knowing that I was autistic, that was kind of a subconscious thing for me to do. But I do feel like that's kind of taught me how to market. I think the two things that kind of overlap between masking and marketing is it's a really carefully considered output designed to suit your audience's preferences. So what I mean by that in terms of masking is I've kind of learned how I can package things in a way that's going to be well received. So as an autistic person, I naturally come across as quite blunt, but I know that that's not well received. And I know that as an autistic person, I really like to talk about my special interests a lot, but that's also not very well received. I know that I can be quite black and white about things, and that's not very well received. So I know along the way from trial and error that, okay, if I package something with a little bit of humour, then that's more well received. People like it if I do that. Or if I say things in a more friendly way, then okay, people like that, that one works, we'll try that again. Or if I kind of show interest in other people more, even if what they're saying doesn't really interest me that much, that goes down well, and then that lets them talk about my stuff afterwards. So I'll try that one again. And I think this is kind of the process that you go through when marketing. And I think this helps me to do that with marketing because I've learned that kind of from a distant perspective. I think the reason I use the word be the zoologist is it's almost as if you need to consider your audience from one step removed. So if you think of kind of me as an autistic person, I am kind of one step removed from the audience of people that I'm marketing to. Yes, I'm a human, but I don't interact with things in the same way that most of my audience will. So I study them in a way that helps me market to them. I think if you think of it as, I probably understand neurotypical society in a way that a zoologist understands how baboons interact with each other. And I think that's something that's really important to remember when you're doing your marketing. If you can kind of not just take things for granted and not just kind of think, what would I like to see in marketing? What would go down well with me? I think if you can take a step back and really analyse your audience and think, who's in there? What do they want to see? What goes down well with them? What have they interacted well with in the past? Then you can kind of hack onto the system that my brain's been doing for a lot of years. The second lesson is cut the fluff. I am naturally, as an autistic person, very straight to the point. There's not much fluff, there's not much waffle. I kind of only really speak when there's something to be said. And I think that definitely has a very positive impact on the work that I do, and definitely the trajectory that I've had off the back of LinkedIn. All of my content is very concise, very to the point, and every word that's in there needs to be in there. That's not something that is intentional by me, it's just the way that I write. But I do think that it's kind of why it's so well received, because people aren't having to navigate through all the writing, they're not having to kind of work out the message, it's just there in front of them. So as a little bit of an example, the post that kind of kicked everything off for me was about talking about what it means to be professional. So for anyone that doesn't know, I wrote a post back in October about the new era of professionalism and how I thought that the idea that people have of what it means to be professional is quite outdated, and it went pretty viral. But this is an example of how I could have written it. This is kind of the thoughts that were in my head. I've been thinking a lot about what it means. I think that there's been a perception. I think this, I think that. Lots of words, lots of long paragraphs, lots of fluff and lots of explanation. This is how I actually wrote it. So there's no kind of justification. There's no long sentences. There's no paragraphs. It's very clear. It's very straight to the point, and every word in there needs to be in there. I think, again, this is something that you guys can learn and kind of hack out of my brain, that kind of look back through your writing and cut back as much as you possibly can. I think it's so easy to kind of over-explain in marketing, but the clearer something is, the clearer someone's going to receive that message. I think it's also really important to remember that 20% of the population are neurodivergent. That's a lot of people, and we receive things in a way like that. So that's how I kind of read everything, that every word that needs to be there needs to be there. So every word that's there, I need to absorb into my brain. So if you're writing in a way that is kind of hinting at things, or there's a lot of waffle, or it's a bit confusing, that 20% of your audience aren't going to take that hint, they're not going to understand that waffle, and they're not going to receive the message. So I think in doing this, not only are you kind of accommodating for the people that need the clarity, but you're making it a whole lot easier for your whole audience to understand the message. Oh, and then, yeah, one final message, do the dump. I was kind of struggling to know what to call this one, but I thought you might remember this one quite well, so we've gone with this. What I mean by do the dump is kind of hinting more towards the ADHD side of my brain. So as someone with ADHD, and even when I didn't know what it was called, something that I've always said to my mum is, I just wish my brain would shut up. There's always hundreds of ideas bouncing around in my brain. There's never just one thought. It's kind of a bit chaotic in there. But again, this is really great as a marketer because it means that there's lots of ideas and there's lots of potential ideas. And even though not all of them are good, if there's kind of 100 ideas from me versus 10 ideas from somebody else, the chances are that in that pile of 100, at least one of them is going to be good. I think this is kind of beneficial because I don't even get to that chance of being able to judge my ideas before I've had them, because I just brain dump and it all comes out. And I think that's kind of how you can use this. So I think most people have the process of having the ideas and choosing the ideas overlap a little bit. So you kind of might be brainstorming, but you won't get it all out. You won't think about it all because you're like, oh no, that's probably not a good one, or that probably won't work, or, you know, we've tried that before. But I think if you can separate those things into two separate tasks, so you can do the dump first, you can have all the ideas, you can get it all out on paper, you can just say any single one of those firing thoughts that comes into your head and get it down, and then do the editing afterwards, you've got a better chance of finding the best idea that was in there to start with that you might not have ever realised was there. Yeah, I think, again, the more ideas you can have, the best chance you have of getting to the best one. There's also a statistic or an idea that I really like from a guy called Matthew Syed, who's a great author. So he has this thing and he says, if you have got a group of 10 people and you ask each of them to come up with 10 ideas, how many ideas do you have? I think naturally we all think, okay, you've got 10 people, 10 ideas each, that's 100 ideas. Not always the case. If we all come up with the same 10 ideas, if I come up with 10 ideas, the guy next to me comes up with 10 ideas, and the girl next to him comes up with the same 10 ideas, we've still only got 10 ideas in total. Whereas if we can all be really creative and have brains that work in different ways and have all the ideas coming out rather than just the 10 that we think are okay to come out, then we've got 100 ideas altogether because we've all got 10 completely different ones. And I think that shows how important it is to just let those ideas come out and to appreciate other people's ideas and to work with people that think in different ways, because you've got two teams of 10 people, one of them's come up with 10 ideas and one's come up with 100. That's 10 times better just from that process of letting the different ideas come out and working with people that have different ideas. So yeah, that's the 3 lessons I've got for you today. Quite short and sweet, but hopefully they'll stick. So 1, be the zoologist. Remember to take a step back from your audience, study them as if they're a foreign species, and really think about the things that they value and respect, the things that they understand, the things that they want from you, and try and provide that as a marketer. Lesson 2, cut the fluff. No waffle, no long sentences, no long paragraphs. Every single word in there needs to be in there and really matters. And lesson 3, do the dump. Try and let your ideas come to light. Try and just get them all out. Try not to judge them, and try to work with people that you can get different ideas from and bounce them around in different ways. So I hope that those lessons feel helpful, and I hope understanding a little bit more about how someone's brain with the 2 A-bombs works will make you feel a little bit like this next time you hear those A-bombs, and a little bit more like this. Thank you.